This week the headlines have been dominated by the fall of the Greek Prime Minister and the announcement of Silvio Berlusconi's departure. So are politicians still capable of responding to the crisis hitting Europe? That's what they're asking here at the G1000 Summit of Citizens. Welcome to this edition of Europe Weekly. We're here in Brussels, where a novel event is taking place, a big summit of citizens. The name is the G1000. Its aim is to revitalise democracy in Belgium, a country that's been without a government for more than 500 days.
What
motivates me is to show an example, participate actively and to be here to make myself heard. I think we're doing something valuable here today. We're going to speak about three big themes: social security, immigration and prosperity during times of financial crisis. People will reflect, exchange, deliberate on themes to find shared priorities. I find it extremely interesting because we have exchanges not only on subjects on the agenda but also on relations between the Dutch and French speakers. What's always good is to have better knowledge and better understanding.
There will be a small group of 32 people, I hope to belong to them, that are going to work on all the material that we are gathering here, and work on this material until April. And then create another way of thinking and living, not only for politicians but for everybody.
It remains to be seen if those
Benoît Derenne,
Benoît Derenne, thanks for joining us. The G1000 is part of a movement that is very much in vogue in Europe, with this desire to kickstart democracy, as we've seen with the Occupy protesters. Where does this come from? Representative democracy, as we know it today, is now far removed from the citizen. Throughout the history of this model, which comes from the 19th century, the world has changed. The speed of information has evolved. The media has greatly changed the lives of everyone. So people no longer find their place in a model that only involves them on election day, but doesn't seek out their opinions at other times. The G1000 also says elections have perverted in some ways the course of democracy. What does that mean? Politicians always come up against obstacles, with these deadlines that require them to constantly re-evaluate what they're doing, to put themselves back in the spotlight. And actually we believe the crisis is also due to this frantic pace from election to election. What's the alternative? Should elections be more spaced out? Constant referendums like in Switzerland? There are certainly many alternatives, and the will of those in the G1000 now is the will to change the political world by saying you should invest in research and development of democracy. Our model is in crisis, and it's now time to govern our democratic model as if it were a good company that invests every year a large portion of its resources into research and development, so it doesn't die. Are there examples of deliberative or participative democracy that inspire you? Many years ago, Denmark launched a Danish Board of Technology. It focused on questions about big technology issues in society and allowed citizens to express themselves, to help Parliament decide on certain issues. Or, for example, in Iceland recently, where 25 people were called upon to help reform the constitution. That's extraordinary. Those are just selective examples on precise themes. Does the difficulty not lie in prolonging, institutionalizing this participative democracy? I would say we'd do well to consider the so-called citizen leave, which means regularly involving citizens in these kinds of processes. One last question about Belgium. More than 500 days without a proper government, just a caretaker one in place. But apparently now the formation of a new government is on track. Are you optimistic about the future of your country? What makes me happy is to see that this crisis led, for example, to the emergence of this G1000 and this process that I think is important. This could be groundbreaking in the world of politics by saying, listen, there are certainly things to do. Also invest heavily in research and development to improve our democratic system. Before we go, a quick look at what's coming up in Europe this coming week. It starts with a plenary session of the European Parliament and finishes with elections in Spain, which of course we'll be covering here on Euronews. That's all for Europe Weekly. Have a great week.
Excellente semaine à tous.